Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to Talk Openly. My name is Jack, and I'm here with my good friend Daniel.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Jack. It's really nice to see your face.
It's really nice to see your face too. Yeah, we were off last week, but really happy to be back.
And I missed you the week before that, too. You were here, but I wasn't.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So, all right. This is a reunion of sorts.
Whee!
Yay. Well, yeah, welcome everybody. We're going to be talking a little bit tonight about how Daniel and I are, putting an effort towards bringing our lives to the Dharma, and we'll talk a little bit about what we mean by that, and some of the strengths and challenges that are coming up for us in that process. So we're looking forward to that discussion. But first, Daniel, I just wanted to check in with you. With it being, several weeks since we've talked, how are things? What's going on in your world?
Oh my gosh. So I'll give you a quick little glimpse onto like Daniel's world, why I was a little off. My youngest child, I've got two daughters, and my youngest daughter got COVID. Mm-hmm. And so thankfully her mom was willing to take care of her. And so like my oldest daughter came and was staying with me the whole time, right? Just to separate. Yeah. And then right as sort of in the middle of my daughter's COVID thing, then her mom got it, right? And so there was this whole thing where it just got really like drawn out, and it was like lots of suffering, in terms of like health and coughing, and I was like, oof. Yeah. They say this is like the newer, gentler version of COVID. So I'm just really glad they didn't get it when it was the harder strain, right?
Oh my gosh, right?
Yeah. It looks pretty awful. Like I'm really glad I didn't get it. But my goodness, like it wasn't good. So like that threw off the routine quite a lot. But then I had something like really exciting happen. So on Tuesday morning, I was asleep. My room is like right next to my driveway. I live in a house and my window's open. My van was parked right outside my window. And at 4:30 in the morning, I wake up to the sound of my van starting.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I'm like, what? Like I jump out, I have no idea. I'm sort of groggy, like I have no idea what's going on, but I just know something's wrong, right? Yeah. And so I throw open the window shade, I look outside, and I watch my van drive down the street. Yeah, somebody came and stole my van, right?
Oh my God.
Yeah, what was weird is the key, I had the only key. So I had no idea. Oh, yeah, no idea, how they did it. Something like that. So they take off with the van. They didn't wake me up. They didn't wake up my dog. My dog is like, she wakes up to like a mouse running by and starts barking at it, right? So like, it was really weird that like they just came and went. And so then I was like, there was some application of sort of, Dharma principles, if you will, in all of this. It was fascinating to watch, observe the reaction and everything. So then I'm like, okay, oh my gosh, call the cops, call the insurance, make a claim, all that kind of nonsense. And then I'm like starting to like, okay, this is real, this happened. Yeah, somebody came and they took your van and and you're gonna have to but everything's gonna be okay, right? My kids were both here asleep, they're fine, I'm fine. Yeah, it's gonna be okay. So then I'm like, then I started sort of jiving with the idea of losing the van. Like I'm not really good at vehicle maintenance. So but once I get a little bit old, I'm kind of ready for them to go, I wouldn't mind having something fresh. And so I was getting used to the idea, like, okay, that van's gone and I'm getting something new and whatever, it's all good. It's gonna be fine. And then Saturday night, I got a call from the Placer County Sheriff's Department. And they were like, hey, we got your van, come get it. And the weirdest thing was, I hop in an Uber, get out there. It's out by like the casino out in Roseville or whatever. And like I get out there and there's like literally just like the sheriff had pulled the guy over and the van was on the side of the road. The sheriff's still sitting there with his lights going. They had apparently taken the guy to jail, right? Whoever was driving the thing, they took him to jail. And they literally just called me up and I came and picked it from the side of the road.
On the freeway.
On the side of the road. Like there's just like the side of like a county road or whatever. There was my van. They were like, we hope you have the key. because there's no key to it, Thankfully I did have the key, but it was just like, it was sort of like this wild experience, right? So then I'm like, I get in the van and the sheriff like, all right, take care. And this guy like crap in there from like all of my stuff is gone. All my kids' softball gear, their backpack, everything's gone, right?
Yeah.
But there's like weird crap in the van that doesn't belong to me, right? And I asked them what to do with it. They were like, just throw it away, whatever, it's no biggie. So I'm like driving down the road, leaving, and I'm like, man, it stinks in here, like kind of like a skunk or like weed. And so I started looking around because something didn't add up. I was like, it really stinks really bad. And like laying right there in my center console was a half smoked joint, right? Like right there. And I was like, man, okay, so this guy, whoever stole the thing, like he didn't just take it and like sell it or try to part it out or anything. Literally was just driving it around smoking weed, like no big deal, right? And then I ended up talking to the sheriffs later on. They were like, yeah, that wasn't the only thing in the car. They were like, he was just loaded up with all kinds of drugs. So so quite a fiasco. It kind of like, it really derailed things because like I said, I'd sort of gotten attached to the idea of the van being gone, and then it came back and I was like, and it was in worse condition than I left it, So like, it sort of reminded me a lot of that, the story about the like the old proverbial story about the farmer with the horse that like leaves and then the sun breaks his leg and all, that one where like it's just like basically there's no way to know how things are going to turn out and whether they're going to turn out well for you or bad for you, right? Like this experience was just that, where I was like, oh no, it's bad, oh no, it's good, oh no, it's bad again.
It's worse. Oh man, that's really wild. And but that's really cool to hear that you also were willing to move with it and consider other options and just different ways to think about the situation. So
oh man, it was like we sometimes talk about the separation between like training and practice. Like training is what we do on the cushion, practice is what we're doing in life. And my training has been in the toilet like the last week, right? Literally like very little. I've been able to meditate a little bit, right? I've been able to be on the cushion a little bit. But I'm both distracted and the break in routine. Like it turns out I'm sort of a creature of habit, right? And I like when I'm in a routine and my routine involves meditating for 24 minutes in the morning and then in the evening and all that, like when that's happening, like, oh, it feels so good. But when it breaks, then I recognize how like sort of attached I am to that routine as well, So there's been a bit of that going on. So like I had lots of opportunity for practice, lots and lots, and that's been great. But I have not been doing a lot of training, and I miss it. I can see like it's sort of like missing the gym for a week. It feels
for sure. Yeah, I mean that really is what it is that we're training a muscle in a way that we've never really worked it before, and so it kind of gets lax pretty quick. I noticed that with my mind too. And I've been meditating the last week or so. I stick pretty, like I'm consistent now. Like that is one of my strengths, is that I'm a very consistent meditator. I don't miss it. But things that I'll kind of drop are maybe like reading something every day, like doing some study, maybe like an analytical meditation. I'll set that to the side because it's like, okay, well, I got shamatha done and now I'm gonna go, I don't know, do homework or be at work or whatever. I'm busy right now, so but that's, for me, it's like, okay, well, it's still no excuse. Like my everyday life, I'm still trying to like what I want is to be totally immersed in dharma. Like that's my goal, is that I really want to have my life dedicated to this practice. And it's still kind of like compartmentalized for me. I don't know if it feels that way for you. But in my everyday life, there's ways that I think because of my training, I now just act in a much more ethical way, but I'm not necessarily like in it all the time. It's kind of feels right now that they're two different things.
Yeah, like the
Yeah.
sun is always shining, but sometimes there's some clouds.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, most definitely. And yeah, I would say I've been having a lot of clouds lately. I guess I can do my update, but yeah, just really struggling with my depression. And that's not like uncommon for me. It's pretty typical. And I would say a lot of my days, like not even the ones that I would like say are like depression days, have some level of like that mood. So it's common. But yeah, like a few days ago, might have even just been 2 days ago, um, I got a something from a friend about like, hey, there's this um uh old growth forest that's going to be logged, like, please contact your representatives and whatnot. And something about it just like really hit me hard. um and like it felt like this just big like kind of bruise like on my heart. um so I just felt like deeply saddened by this. And it's also a place where it's like one of like a really pristine habitat for spotted owls. And so it just felt like a big loss. And of course there's things that people are doing to try and prevent it and whatnot. But clear cutting around here happens really, really frequently. And so I don't know, it doesn't feel hopeful is what I'm saying. And so, yeah, I think I'm just a little bit feel like I'm accepting and understanding the level of um, just the level of loss that we're experiencing as a world. um and and as a species, like it's a really hard time. The hurricane last week and the severe temperatures in your area, just a month or so ago. It just feels really intense.
Yeah, it
And
does.
so, yeah, so I've just been kind of sitting with that and mourning a little bit. But this morning I was like, okay, Jack, like you're really kind of starting to despair. And I know that when I start to despair, I start to lose sight of the possibilities and maybe avenues that can be taken um, to change things, or whatever, to become involved. And um, so I picked up Lojong this morning, the Lojong slogans, which are these points of mind training in Tibetan Buddhism. Really, really awesome stuff. For those who are watching, if you haven't heard of Lojong, look it up. It's really helpful. And they're just these slogans that like you can read like one a day or something, even keep on one for like several days if you find it really helpful. And just have that be something that you meditate with like throughout the day. And so the one that I was reading today um was, when the world is full of evil, transform all mishaps into the path of Bodhi. And so it was nice. I just kind of on my commute and on my walk up to work, I just repeated that to myself. um and there was something really peaceful about that, and felt like it was kind of at least transforming my mood, you know while not changing anything about the situation. It was changing my mood and my ability to think about it differently. um and so I'm working with that. And I'll talk a little bit more in a bit about other meditations that I do. the everyday with those kind of issues around depression. But yeah, that's kind of what I've been dealing with the last
that's
week or
heavy.
so.
I'm sorry to hear that you're struggling with depression, Jac.
Thank you.
Yeah, it sucks.
It does.
Yeah. And it's hard to tell, like like the different kind of styles, it shows up in different fashions, right? Sometimes it's clearly situational, right? Where you're like, oh, it's, because my life situation is whatever, not preferable or whatever. And therefore you can sort of see almost the temporary nature of it, right? Like, or some people like my brother, one of my brothers is like deeply affected by changes in the season. Like he goes like, oh, like hardcore, like it's massive, huge depression cycles, right? With that correlate with the seasons. It's not exactly matched up, but there's some kind of a relationship there.
Yeah.
So there's like a sense of like being able to ride it out or whatever. But then there's, you get into like clinical depression, right? And that's like, it's harder, right? Because that's there's not really a clear end in sight.
Right.
The one thing that I've noticed as far as like my relationship with depression is it simply becomes more familiar.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, hello, hi, it's you again.
Right.
Like, come on in. Like, how long are you staying this time?
Yep.
Right.
I know.
Yeah, that's it. But I mean, on a certain level, like that first part of at least being able to be mindful of it, that it's there, like aware, like being able to say hello, hi, I recognize that you're there now in my life, your depression, right? And that's what that looks like. Do you how would you, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but how would you take that Lojong saying about transforming mishaps into Bodhi? How would you apply that to depressive episodes or depression in general?
Yeah. I mean, it's an opportunity, I think, is what it's saying, is that it's an opportunity to delve deep into what you're experiencing and the nature of it. And so, and this is, I guess, kind of a good segue into the topic of, like bringing our lives, our everyday lives to the Dharma. But with it being such a common experience for me, is that it like you said, there's this way that you can kind of get more familiar with it, and instead of being resistant to it coming up every time, I acknowledge it, like you said. And then with this particular Lojong slogan, just seeing like, okay, what is this trying to tell me? What is this depression right now trying to signal to me?
Yeah.
Am I maybe, is there something I'm missing? Am I maybe like not feeling in alignment with my values? It's am I forgetting about the bodhicitta nature that I'm trying to work on developing, which is, bodhicitta is that that compassionate wish to help all sentient beings reach enlightenment.
Yeah.
And so I think it was a good reminder that, like, okay, I was becoming very like kind of internalized and, focusing on how like me and this feels awful and whatnot, in relation to feeling awful about things happening in the world. But it was a reminder that, like, okay, I'm not the only one experiencing this. And if I expand my vision and see this as an opportunity to really train in bodhicitta, then I can start feeling that connection to other beings, and maybe even start thinking about some solutions.
Bodhicitta definitely seems like working on developing it seems like a helpful response. I was browsing a subreddit the other day called Collapse. It's all about societal collapse. Like
interesting. Okay.
Okay.
Writing it down.
And I actually, so I don't subscribe to it, but I for some reason I felt drawn to like look it up because I just felt in the mood. I was like, kind of like you, I was like, woo, this thing's going to hell in a handbasket. Like the weird thing is like like in talking to people I'm like, yeah, this is definitely like the cyclical nature of things, the rise of sort of authoritarian governments and whatever, all this stuff, but it always happened on such a localized level, but it's no longer localized, it's worldwide now, and there's no escaping.
Right.
Like you can't ignore it, you can't anything, right? Like I think there really has been no greater time in our life when we needed refuge, than now, because the bad news is heavy. There's a lot of it, and it's like trying to drink from a fire hose or something. Just so much of it. I mean, to me, like there was this, I don't mean to be harsh, but like there was this part of my mind when you were talking about, oh, there's this part of the old growth redwoods that is going to be cut down, and I was like, right, along with several other 100 million acres all around the world, right? Like that's just a piece of the pie. I mean, it's awful, right? Like there's that sort of feeling. Anyway, I was browsing this, I felt that's how I was feeling, and I kind of like when you're sad, you want to listen to sad music or something.
Yeah.
I went deliberately into the collapse subreddit just so that I could like see what are people who are thinking like this, what's going on. And it was actually quite beautiful. One of the things that I recognize, one of the things that was brought up sort of again and again that I thought was really, really helpful was they drew a relationship. They said, look at the relationship between societal collapse or the end of humanity or whatever you might want to call that, and your own end, which is inevitable, right? And look at it like, okay, so like on one hand, maybe you can somehow accept your own end and be like, okay, yes, I recognize the death of this body and da 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 da. But we don't want to like let go of this notion that humanity at least would continue. The planet would be okay. The babies are going to be okay, aren't they? It's going to be fine, right? The animals, the cute panda bears and koalas, they're not all going to like die horrific deaths due to us and our stupidity, are they? Really? Right? There's like that kind of sort of despair that like starts to show up. But like what's the difference between the end of us, the personal sort of self, whatever you want to call it, our death, and the end of society at large, right? What's the difference between the two of them? And I remember I'm not going to read it, I don't even have it handy right now, but there was one user's comment that it was exquisite, and had such a Buddhist sort of vibe to it, where it was like, yeah, recognize the end of all things. Like all things are impermanent, all of it. And if this is us collapsing, then so be it. That's what's happening. And don't despair, right? Life was always sort of meaningless, or it didn't have a defined meaning. It was always up to us to define it. And that opportunity is still very much here, which is what you were saying about bodhicitta, right? And so like there's this sort of although there's like a sort of a similar root, with nihilism, right? But nihilism gives way to sort of like, it's all meaningless and none of it matters anyway. So I'm just gonna blah. It's all, I can be bad things and I can be insensitive and I don't have to care. There's that kind of a response which is not helpful.
Right.
And then there's the other response, which is recognizing, yep, okay, I see how things are. It's all impermanent, right? Like there's no inherent self. There's none of that, right? Okay. But you know what? Like there is compassion too. There is this sort of like out of all of that despair, like, fuck, we're all in this condition. You, me, all of those people who are, out there, everybody, we're all in this shared condition, right? And so like, if there's ever an opportunity, if there was ever a time for humanity to sort of wake up and to lean in towards each other with compassion and kindness and love and gentleness and understanding and all of that, now's that time, right? Like, this is it.
Oh man, that's some really good stuff right there. Because it's kind of like a wake-up call, where you just kind of snap your fingers like, hey, like this is not sticking around. Like this is not sticking around. This house isn't, like, and that, I love that within that, when we talked about impermanence a few weeks ago, And how my struggle with that is that, you know, I want there to be something that you can hold on to. Like, I feel like there needs to be something, at least like a concept you can love, or even impermanence as, you know, a concept, that there's got to be something that is lasting. But I think what that just boils down to is like, that's grasping, and grasping only gets us caught in the same loop over and over and over again. And so to just kind of settle down and say, okay, this is my situation right now. I'm part of this. I'm part of creating this situation too. And yeah, it's just like the key at the bottom of it all is compassion. Otherwise, yeah, we're going down and it's going to be awful. But
yeah, absolutely. Plus, you know, like, it doesn't give us a role in it. If we really are completely nihilistic about it and throw up our hands and say, I'm just gonna, you know, pursue pleasure or whatever, it doesn't benefit us, right? It doesn't help. It doesn't make our perspective about the world situation any better. It makes it worse. It increases stress and anxiety and depression and all of that. We don't need that. The opposite direction.
Yeah.
It's just like, in a very practical way, it just isn't helpful, right? And like, I think that's where like the Dharma has really, like, I feel like I've really benefited from mindfulness training, right? And so like, I'm at this point, it's an interesting place where I can sort of recognize, like, I can maintain throughout the day sort of longer stints of continued awareness, right? Like, where there aren't these breaks, and I can sort of see the impermanence of things, and I can accept things, right? Like, it wasn't that hard. I didn't wail in despair. I didn't shed a tear. I don't think I got any like cortisol rush, really, other than like maybe like 30 seconds worth or so when my car was stolen. It was like, okay, oh, I see, whatever, move on, right? And like, in that sense, like, my baseline, my operating baseline of like my ordinary life is so much more peaceful, and it's so much okayer
right,
than it was ever in the past, right? In the past, I would have been like, oh, this is just it, this is my luck, and blah. I don't even want to go there. I don't recognize that anymore. I don't see it. I don't know that that's how it was. I'm not like that anymore. So in that sense, you know, peace, right? A reduction in suffering. Yes, yeah, that's this really practical, beautiful result that I've experienced directly as a result of my practices. On the other hand, the part where I struggle, the obstacles, the difficulty with Dharma is really in my personal relationship to it all, and towards karma, right? Like, I can sort of see the cause and effect thing, but I still have that nihilistic sort of streak where I'm like, well, whatever. And so it's kind of like, I can be incredibly sort of dismissive and just like accept, like, float. I'm just floating, right? And floating feels really good. It's nice. Like, it's cool. Like, everything's just like, nothing can hurt. It's all good. It doesn't matter. Seal my van, whatever.
Yeah.
Up my cycle, whatever. Just change everything. Okay, whatever. Like, okay, I can hang with that. And that's great. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not knocking it. It's incredibly helpful, right? I mean, it frees me up to make better decisions. But there's this other aspect where I feel really, you know, like, you opened up talking about bringing effort to our practice, right? And I feel like that's actually where I'm like stuck, right? Where like there is, you know, I am practicing, but there's a certain like lack of effort, in particular to like like, there's like times where I just don't want to apply.
Oh, I feel you. Yeah.
I'm just like, nah, I'm not gonna. And then like, I can actually, it's been fascinating. I can watch sort of the force field of ignorance show up, right? It's powerful. It's really powerful. The problem is, like we talked about before, the more we use it, the more powerful it gets. you know? There's this double-edged sword, right? Like, where I'm like, on the one hand, like, great, like, I can accept things, right? But it's sort of like, you know, Tara Brach, right? And okay, so her famous therapeutic formula is ACT therapy, right?
Right, yeah.
Acceptance and commitment therapy. And so like I'm halfway there. I've got the acceptance thing down, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I'm like, I'm not gonna say I'm a master, but my goodness, like compared to where I was before, I've definitely have mastered some forms of acceptance, right? Like that have become really powerful and really good, really helpful, beneficial to my life. But the commitment, which is the effort, which is the wisdom aspect of it, right? Like that's the actual, like the application where you see karma and you see this is going to lead, these conditions will become the causes for something that I don't want. And this is, you know, it's like the application of that, what is it? St. Francis prayer, right? Grant me the serenity to accept
serenity prayer, yeah. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. And I feel like that, like I'm at that sort of point where like maybe I can kind of see it a little bit clearer. That's where like the being able to calm the mind is helpful. I can see things more clearly. But then there's the next step of action, which is like actually I think Lama touched on this in a talk recently that he gave. And he talked about how, I think he said something to the effect, again, I'm not going to quote him, but it was something to the effect of 75% of Buddhism is all about having a functional personal self.
Yeah.
I think it was something like, I think I got it pretty close to what he said, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's actually the part where I'm kind of missing, right? Like, yeah, don't get me wrong. Like I function in the world. I can carry on. I can have a job and I can take care of my responsibilities. But I don't think that's what's meant by a functioning personal self, right? Like I think there's something more to it than that, and it has to do with this deep way of relating to the world, and it has to do with like not just compassion in the sense of like aspirational compassion, right? It's not just like aspirational bodhicitta. It's living, active bodhicitta, right? Actually, like, it's the Tara who is actually, you know, ready, poised, eager to act, right? And I think that's where I'm sort of like I'm caught, you know, like on the, and then there's this other part to it that comes along with it where I see this like benefit, this personal benefit where I'm like, oh, my life has improved. Things aren't as bad as they were before. Like things are quite better, like a lot better in many ways. And so I see positive proof of the goodness, right? I see how this stuff works. And I'm like, yeah, that's really good. But like, I want it to have already done, I want it to have worked already. Like like, I don't like the fact that I recognize that I'm so far from sort of perfect application, right? I really want to have already done all the work so that I'm already past that.
Most definitely. Oh yeah. I mean, that resonates with me a lot. And what you're saying too about like commitment. There's a way that I feel like I really have faith in a lot of the Dharma. It makes sense to me. I'm starting to understand it and why it's laid out in the way it is, and how, you know, ethical action is so important to the path, even though, you know, on an ultimate level, maybe those actions they're also empty, just in the same way that negative actions are empty. They have the same nature, but they're, you know, that they're not the same. It's, you know, ethical action helps us, you know, move forward in our understanding and our ability to impact the lives of others, of course. But there's a way to me that like I lose sight of like the juiciness of that. Like I don't know any other way how to describe it, but like do you ever have like days like where you just really feel aligned with like the Dharma, where you're really like, oh man, I feel like so joyful and I love people, like god damn it, like people are fucking great, you know, like we're just like yes. And everything just feels like kind of a Lojong slogan. And I in my groups, I'm really like on it, like talking with clients about like all this Dharma stuff, and it feels really good. And it feels like they're vibing it, you know. And then there's days where most days for me are not like that. right? Like most days for me feel like I'm kind of like faking it a little bit, like faking it till you make it. And I mean, part of that probably is depression, right? But I think it's also that there's like some level of commitment to it that I haven't been able to make. And maybe like a where I still feel like I kind of have to suspend my disbelief a little bit around things, where it's like, okay, compassion's great, but it's not really gonna like save the world. It's not really gonna make, this person in front of me, their life like completely better, like this person who has to live outside with HIV and like, all the things. Um and so I kind of like get stuck in a rut of like, but is it actually going to work? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
you know what I mean?
I hear you, man. I think that that's the interesting thing about faith, right? Like, like when the dharmic winds are, when your sails are full of the dharmic and you're just plowing ahead, full steam in the right direction, the stars are all aligned. Like that feels really, really, really good. And then sometimes you're going against the wind, and sometimes you're in the doldrums.
Yeah.
There is no wind, right? And so like there's what's the relationship? Is faith only there? Is faith in the wind and the power of sail only there when it's blowing, right? Like not, like even when it's not blowing, like there's still sort of this recognition of the truth, like of the rightness of it, and I think that's where we're like, I think that there is actually, I notice in myself, this sort of like, I tend to associate goodness with the wind in my sail, and
Right.
I tend to associate like challenge, like having to tack against the wind. Like to me, like that feels bad, right? Like yeah, I'm still making progress, but I'm tacking against the wind, right? It's hard. It's
right.
Like I don't know these terms. I'm not a sailor, but concept, right? And so like, and man, the doldrums just suck. Like I hate all of it. The only thing I want is full wind, full sail.
Right.
All the time.
All day, every day.
I don't ever want it to stop,
Right.
And that's delusional. That's completely delusional.
It is. Yeah. That's such a great reminder, because it kind of, it pulls me back to what is my motivation? And I think that's a really important thing to remind myself every day. And I do, every morning I do like the kind of motivational prayers, like what am I doing this for? What's, what are my intentions as I'm, going about my day with other beings? My ultimate aim is to be of service, really. And so I think that's such a good reminder to be like, okay, am I just trying to feel comfortable and like excited and powerful, safe, given pleasure? Like, is that's how I want to feel all the time? And that's really my motivation right now still. And those things aren't bad things. It's not bad to have the wind in your sails. It's not bad to experience, pleasure or goodness or, comfort. But that's not, like you said, it's not realistic to think that that's how things should go. And to also tie that in with faith, that is like, oh man, what a shallow ground to be standing on, because as we talked about a few weeks ago, that it's not sticking around, that it's just it's impermanent, it's not going to stick around. And so am I trying to build my long-term stability, and long-term in terms of lifetimes, if I'm really thinking in dharma terms, long-term stability and long-term happiness, because that is what enlightenment is, nirvana. We're completely aligned with the nature of reality, and that brings ultimate peace. So yeah, I think the everyday practice is really what is my motivation. What really is my motivation today?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Also, it's funny. I have this. People who know me, they recognize that there's this one question that I absolutely cannot stand, and that is like, what do you want, right? And it really doesn't matter on what level we're talking about, whether it's what do you want for dinner or what do you want for your life. I really I can't clearly define like what I want. And so oftentimes I do come back to this question of motivation. And I recognize actually that there is this sort of faking it till you make it with respect to bodhicitta, where I just sort of like I've had to sort of like kind of push myself to be like, yes, no, truly, I want all beings to be happy, to be free of suffering, and I want to be, like, if it involves me, I'd like to be able to be a part of that. But it doesn't feel as fake anymore, right? It feels a little bit more make. And it's weird to me actually how, like, I can't really put it into words, like how when I examine my motivation, when I ask myself, okay, well, why are you tacking into the wind? Why are you this? Why all this? When I don't actually have a satisfying personal answer, like for me in any sense, I don't know any of it, why, but I do know a sense of satisfaction and meaning and purpose and all of those sort of wonderful terms that is associated with being of benefit to others, right? It sounds kind of cliche or whatever, right? But like there's real goodness there. And I feel like, so when I can align myself with it, it feels better. And I'll give you an example. So like, even though like a lot of times my seated meditation practice will fall off, like it has in the last week or so, week and a half, something like that, right? Like it's fallen by the wayside a bit. And I recognize it. I see it. I'm painfully aware of it. Like I know it. Yeah. But even then, there's this one sort of little daily activity that I don't miss. It's sort of a religious activity for me. So a dear friend of mine gave me a Tara statue that sits by my door. I think I've mentioned it before. Mm-hmm. And I have this little handmade clay bowl that has like a sand dollar in it. I don't know how to explain it, but whatever. It's a water bowl. Mm. And I have these flowers around the yard. So like every day I go and I put some flowers and get it all nice and make it pretty by the front door. And then I do some, Tara, Tutari, right? Like do some mantras. And I recognize in that moment that what I'm doing is I'm aligning myself. And this is always first, early in the morning, right? Like when I first open the door. And so like I recognize, like, cause I'd ask myself, like, why are you doing this, right? You don't believe in some kind of supernatural Tara being, like, why are you, like, what is this? And I recognize that what it is I'm aligning myself with these aspirations, these goals in my life. I see the wisdom in being passionate. Right? I see the wisdom and I recognize it. I see that I'm not there yet. I'm not quite there yet. But when I align myself with it, just my intentions, right? Like then it feels like it really has an effect. Like it's the weirdest thing. Like I really feel like I can see a shift in my perspective. I can sense a change in my heart space when I do that, right? I can watch it and because I can see in my mind it asking me like, why are you doing this? Like, you silly, picking flowers oh, come on, right? There's this part of me that's just like, what the hell are you doing, Yeah. But then the answer is very clear. The answer is I'm aligning myself with my intentions that I know are good and, that are wise. And so like, it kind of bleeds over into the rest of the day. It's sort of like the way, like to continue with the sailing sort of thing, right? It's like that part of it, like doing our morning meditations or like that kind of an activity, setting ourselves and realigning like we get sort of thrown off a little bit, right? Like we got to get the rudder back to the, pointed in the direction that we want to go. So like if there is wind, right? Then like we can actually move in the right direction, because like you never know in a day when the wind is going to pick up. You never know like when things are going to change and things are going to shift, right? And if you haven't gotten your intentions clear, if you haven't sort of gotten yourself pointed in the right direction, you could be in for a world of hurt, right? When it does pick. And so like to me, I feel like that's like the benefit of like these daily practices. I mean, like there's a number of different daily practices that I'll do even if I'm not meditating. And I do them because I can because of this reason. It realigns me, it just points me in the right direction, because on my own, I just start floating. Like I said, I'll float in any direction.
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful point. That kind of reorientation, regardless of how we're feeling personally.
That's right.
Because it really doesn't matter. Like it really does not matter how we're feeling personally. That kind of reorientation can be just such a guide for the day. And yeah, it's like thinking about moods. This is kind of a newer practice for me, but thinking about moods as, seasons. They're seasons. They're clouds on the sky. That can be a really helpful practice for me. My everyday kind of just moodiness. And that, and Lama says, like if you're feeling like crappy, that's when you should meditate more.
Yeah.
Which just makes me like, want to shake a fist to the sky, because like it's the last thing I want to do when I'm feeling crappy. Like when I'm feeling crappy, I really just want to like plug in my headphones. Like you said, I want to listen to sad music. I want to just like stay in bed. It's really hard for me to get up. But that is just going to pass like a cloud in the sky. And it's interesting. I've found that oftentimes when I'm having that kind of like cloudiness in my mind, a lot of times when I sit down, I just sit down and let it kind of, things just kind of settle. I'll oftentimes have a really centered and sharp meditation where I'm on it.
Oh yeah.
And so it's like, even though I had all this resistance, my mind was right there all the time, because it always is,
right.
Right. And even on days where it's like, okay, my mind is pretty dull, I'm just like lazy, not really working in my meditation on applying antidotes, even in those meditations, I find afterwards that my mind has sharpened just even a slightest bit. Like I rarely leave meditation and feel lazy, feel like more slack or sleepy or whatever. And I know that that's not everyone's experience. But it's just been interesting for me to remind myself, like, whatever mood I'm experiencing, meditation can go with it. No mood needs to cancel out a meditation.
No, watching the mind, right? Like it's actually, when we have those perturbances, whether they're light or dark, like those are great opportunities to watch. That's what you're saying. Yeah. It's actually easier to watch the formations when there's like real clouds, right? When there's thunderstorms and shit going on, right? When there's a rainbow or whatever, like it's easy to pay attention to it, right?
Yeah, it's so interesting.
Right there it is. Wow. And then there's this like, it's a really quite magical, right? To then just see that awareness, that knowingness, that whatever you want to call it, it's like the sun, right? It's just shining. It doesn't do anything but that, right? Yeah. And so like it's like such a wonderful opportunity to I always thought that I always figured when I got into meditation, I thought that I would get the power to dissolve the clouds.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I thought I was gonna get some kind of like, like I don't know, like some kind of power. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, right?
Yeah,
like
most definitely.
But and I think it's true. It has, but it's like it's truly transcendence, I think, right? Because transcendence doesn't negate the things that it transcends, right? It's sort of just like, it just goes beyond, goes beyond that, right? And like, so like, it's really, you know, like there's nothing, to me is like, it's just, I don't know how to explain it, but like there's these opportunities where we can like, almost like we can dissolve all conceptual everything into this state of just sort of like knowing and this openness, or whatever you want to call it, right? And like that part of it, that's what draws me in, right? And that's what like pulls me in. That's what makes me want to keep doing this, is because I love that part of it. I love the sort of destructive aspect of it, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so like I guess that's why like I have a tapestry of Shiva, right? The destroyer. Like I like that. Yeah. But there's this other creative aspect as well. There's this way that we need to relate to each other and to the world. Like just because there's no self doesn't mean I'm not here and you're not there, right? And that we have to get along, and we have to do, like, we want to work together in harmony with each other and with our natural world to, you know, create, to affect. We know changes are happening, and we know we're affecting it, and that everybody else is affecting it. So like we want to do things to affect positive change, the kind of change that we want to see in this world. And I know you and me and our kind of people, like the kind of changes we want to see are reduction in suffering, and decrease in delusion, and increase in clarity and happiness and peace. And that just sounds groovy.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. You know, that reminds me of another Lojong slogan that kind of helps reorient the mind when, you know, particularly for me, when I have these kind of types of despairing moments where I'm really latching on to things that, you know, I don't have control over. I don't have control over certain things that are happening. And so this Lojong slogan, drive all blames into one, is this very interesting one that initially makes me kind of angry, because I'm like, are you like saying, you're not saying that this is all my fault? No, this is not all my fault.
That was my reaction. That's what I was like, really, come on.
Yeah. But what it's saying, I think what it's reminding me is that, you know, when I'm having these kind of like major fluctuations in my mood and how I'm experiencing things, and what I need to do is then turn and say, I'm creating this mood. Like, sure, it's awful that forest is being planned to be cut down, and that the owls are going to have less of a habitat. That's awful. But you know, it's my mood that is making me miserable and suffer.
Right.
And actually, if I could, you know, blame that on the self-centered mind, the mind that is like, I should feel happy, I should feel good, I should feel okay all the time, and that's fucking me up. Actually, I need to blame that and come to a place where I can be more useful, because turns out there are things I can do for that forest. I can, you know, send that letter, I can protest. There's things that I can do. But if I'm stuck in that place of, oh, like, I am suffering because of this, and they're doing that to me.
That's right.
You know, then I'm just going to be lost. I'm just going to be moping forever. And I don't want that. I want to create less suffering in the world, like you said. And I want to do things about, you know, forests and all that, you know, these kind of everyday realities that we're living in. But yeah, we have to have that wisdom mind that recognizes that a lot of times we're just stuck in a very self-centered place, even if we think that we're, you know, like.
Yeah, exactly. You reminded me of, like, what you just said reminded me of the very first thing that Lama ever told me personally in a darshan session. I'll never forget it, because I was really mad after I heard it. Like, I don't know, like it didn't sit well with me, but it resonated ever since. He hit the bell, and it's still ringing. And that is, he said, all experiences are neutral, right? They only become charged or meaningful through the, you know, the apprehender, the person who's apprehending the experience, who's having the experience, right? And so like the goodness, the badness, the rightness, the wrongness, all of that's internal. All of that's like that's inside of us. Like the experiences themselves, the entire world, like if our universe, our whole universe, not just our solar system, but if our universe just blinked out like that, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Like it certainly could. Like, to whom is it a problem? Is it a problem for you? Is it me? Who is it? And I think that that's where like that question, like it is actually really helpful, I think, when we're having these depressive episodes or anxious episodes, right? Like I myself am more on the anxiety end of the spectrum, right? I think that like what's helpful to me anyway is that question, like who is anxious, right? Because then it starts to unravel, that the knot begins to unravel itself just with that question, like who is it that's experiencing that? Because there's this part of me that like immediately goes like, well, I recognize there is no self, no inherent self, and it begins to sort of like, oh right, oh I see, causes, conditions, okay, and like that part of it, like somehow that's comforting to me, like it's helpful, right? Yeah. And it's relaxing. It's sort of like it lets go of some of the tightness around it, because like you said, you didn't say it exactly, but like when the depression shows up or whatever, when you go and listen to some sad music, that's like attachment, like that's like propping it up, that's trying to like make it solid, that's trying to keep it around for some reason, right? Like, and that's not, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because I think that sadness is a teacher, right? There's this beautiful song by one of my favorite bands called, the band is Bird Talker. The name of the song is Blue Healer. I highly encourage you to listen to it. Once we hang up, Blue Healer by Bird Talker. An absolutely gorgeous song. But like if we think about the guru principle, then we recognize these these states that show up. They're teachers as well. Yeah. Right? There is actually something there. And maybe that's, maybe, I'm not saying that this is how it is, but it could be that maybe that's kind of why we hold on to them, because we are getting something from it, right? We do associate sort of a negative, we do sort of say in our minds, like, this is bad and I don't want it, and da-da-da-da. But at the same time, like, we don't want to let it go. Like, even if people offer us all kinds of solutions for letting it go or whatever, we don't want to. We gotta grab onto it.
Well, it kind of helps you feel alive for a moment, right?
Totally. Like,
I'm feeling again, where it's like so much of our everyday lives is this kind of monotony and like just boredom,
doldrums.
The doldrum, exactly. So we're looking for something to either kick us up or, bring us down, because that's what...
I'll take either. I'm always either one. Kick me up, take me down, but just like fill my sails or give me something to fight against. I don't care. Give me something.
Totally. I know. Yeah. How interesting we are in our minds. And I think, as we're wrapping up, that's something that I found really just interesting and beautiful about like Tibetan Buddhist practice is how Tantra can help us, explore those emotions and transform them into useful action. And real quick, in the last minute, I actually did Manjushri practice a couple days ago after hearing this news about the forest. And I was, throughout my practice, I was thinking, like I have this sadness, deep sadness, like, please, Manjushri, like, please, like, help me get some of that wisdom. And at the very end of my practice, as I was, saying like the concluding prayers, I had this thought in my mind, like, okay, as a, I'm going to be a social worker. And social workers are trained to work with people, in various vocations, like in big transitions, life transitions, mental health and whatnot. What if I were to work with, loggers on transitioning out of the industry, because I don't want them to fail. And so, it was just like this.
Oh my God, a support group for loggers who are having a crisis of conscience.
Yeah.
Oh my God. We'll help you. We'll help you. Are you like, do your neighbors, are like, they don't accept you as a logger who's coming out as an environmentalist? Right. Like, we'll be there for you. Come on. It's okay. Of course you feel bad.
Yeah.
What you can do to change it. Oh, I love it. I love it. Oh.
And it's just so cool that Manjushri, that practice is like working with the energy that I was feeling in my day, working with that and seeing that I could transform it. And so that's the wonderful like mastery of this, you know, of dharma, is that like it just etches down, it etches my self-centeredness, my moods. It just takes that down a notch, so I can actually see like there's stuff that you can be doing, my friend.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah, totally. There is stuff that you can be doing, right? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So true.
Oh man, Daniel, well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate you so much. And I look forward to next week.
You're the best, Jack. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. It was good to see you again.
Yes, Daniel. Thanks. All right.
Take
Take care,
care.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.